we are going to move on to our keynote speaker. And our keynote for today is Derek Flanzraich, and he has a name that has to be checked before you pronounce it, just like I do. So I'm going to read you what you may already know if you read the conference program. Derek Flanzraich is an entrepreneur on a mission to make everyone a greatist, someone who simply makes better choices for their fitness, health, and happiness. He's the founder and CEO of Greatist, a health and fitness media startup working to make healthy living cool. Greatist is currently the fastest growing site in the space with over 5 million unique visitors per month. Derek was previously with Clicker.com, which was acquired by CBS and NBC Universal's digital entertainment strategy, and has been building organizations since he started his dog walking business at 10 years old. Now here's what you don't know. Ladies, I have it on confidential information that Derek is wearing bright red shoes and socks today for the sole purpose of distracting you from staring at his dimples. So please don't stare at his dimples. He wants to get his message out. Also, Derek has promised me a very high energy presentation. But in order for him to give you energy, he needs some energy back. So please do me a great big favor. Slide your chairs back. Come on, slide your chairs back. Stand up and give me a great big Affiliate Summit welcome for Derek Flanzraich. Derek, come on up.
Perfect. The perfect setup. Oh my gosh, now I have to live up to that. I don't even get the cool music either. All right, I'm humbled and honored to be here. I'm excited to talk to you guys today. I've enjoyed the conference a lot the last few days. I've learned a lot. And I'm not totally sure what I'm supposed to be doing here, but I think what I'm supposed to be doing is talking about where marketing is going and a little bit from my experience, how I think you can win in the future. So the title that I came up with 5 minutes ago was Creating Change That Will Last. And I guess I mean that two ways. One is really truly building something that will stick around for a long time and also that will generate a lot of income. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about health, which is the space that I'm extraordinarily passionate about. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was like, what I think the future holds. I'm going to talk about marketing, what it used to be like and where I think that's going. I'll talk a little bit about my story, and then my experience with Greatist, and what I think that can tell us all about how to succeed in maybe both areas. I'm also going to reference Disney a lot because I really like Disney, and we'll see how that goes today. So health. Health, I don't know if this will it might not work, but if any of you have seen this GIF, basically it just shows that we as a country are getting a lot more fat, and I probably don't need to tell you guys that things are pretty bad. But I think what's worse actually is the way that we talk about health, and the way that we have shows that are called The Biggest Loser, right? It's a pun. It's somebody's going to lose a lot of weight, but also they're a loser. And I think that's what's really wrong with the space. It's an industry where people are in it to make money when you don't succeed. And it's easy to make money the easy way. Men's Health doesn't even have to try to come up with new headlines. Every single one of their magazines has six-pack abs in 6 weeks on their cover. So they don't even have to try. But imagine if that were different. And imagine if people realize that health isn't about washboard abs and isn't about being super skinny, but it's actually about just feeling happier. Imagine a world where all these things that are scientifically proven from eating well and working out, they all help you do this, which is absurd. Imagine what that world would look like. Marketing, similarly, was in a bad place. At least in the health space, when you would go and search in Google 3 or 4 years ago, the results were so shitty. And the worst offender in many ways was Livestrong.com, which is a demand media property. It actually has nothing to do with Lance Armstrong, which may or may not be a good thing, depending on what you think about him. But Livestrong.com is the worst. And these are, by the way, titles that I pulled in the last few weeks. They've done a pretty good job of ridding themselves as the worst stuff. But stuff like how many calories can you burn while on crutches is just it's a really good example of how the space in many ways thinks about health. And it's not that their content is bad and that they pay less than $15 per article. It's that the way they talk about it is what I think is wrong. So marketing tomorrow, things have changed, right? With Google's Panda and Farmer and Penguin have changed profoundly what we see in the SERPs, the search engine result pages. The internet is huge and getting bigger. This is actually what the internet looks like. At least that's what came up in Google image search. I don't really know. But it's huge and getting bigger, and there's never been more noise and more stuff for us to see. And then social media has really profoundly changed everything. For the first time, amidst all this noise, there's ways for certain things to come to the top because real people are actually sharing it. And so imagine if the best stuff like this, were to beat stuff like that. This actually says how to lose 5 pounds in 5 minutes, which if you guys are planning on trying that during this talk, you could lose a lot of weight. So my story is a little different from Steve's yesterday because it's a lot less impressive. But I grew up fat and alone. I had my hand in a whole arm in a cast for 4 years, last on every sports team always, the last picked. And finally I got really frustrated. This is me as a kid. Sweet shirt though. And I wanted to be picked second to last. That's what I wanted, that more than anything. And so I got into fitness to try and accomplish that. And in doing that, I was a huge clown. And I did all kinds of silly things because people told me to, or I went to sites that I thought I could trust. Once a trainer told me that the way to lose weight was to drink 3 muscle milks a day, and I did that for an entire summer. I'm pretty sure he was joking because it's a ridiculous thing. Muscle milk, for those of you that don't know, is like this protein shake that's so bad for you that they even have a light version, which is amazing. It did not work. That actually had the opposite effect. I've spent absurd amounts of money I didn't have on vitamins and supplements because I read about them online and because I heard that that was the wonder pill that everyone needs to try. By the way, most recent science suggests that basically none of them help you at all. And if any of them do, what you're really doing is just spending money on like really expensive urine. So WTF, right? Like, what's the deal? And why is there, if I were to ask all of you right now to try and come up with a brand in the consumer health space that you trust, just like think about it right now. What would be the brand? One that speaks to you in a way that resonates with you, one that you could rely on every time. Flintstones vitamins. God, those gummy vitamins. They're the only example I could think of. No, but GNC, right? Vitamin Shop, things that are trying to sell you these vitamins and supplements. Or Nike and Lululemon, which are trying to sell you this apparel. But why is there no brand that we really like, is of this generation, that speaks to us and that we can turn to? I think it's embarrassing. I think, what if that were to exist? How awesome would that be? Very awesome is the answer. That would be very awesome. And so that's what we're trying to build with Greatist. And that's what Greatist is. We're trying to basically build a brand. That's what the site looks like. We're trying to make healthy living cool. We're trying to change the way people talk about health and think about health, just so it's in a healthier way. So it says, look, you were in Vegas the last few days, and you probably didn't make too many healthy choices. I know I didn't. But you could, right? And if you did, why would you be making them? That talks to people and says, hey, go out and get drinks and party at Chateau all night, and that's normal. Maybe have a healthier breakfast the next morning and skip the bagel. So this is Greatist. We launched in 2011. We've been the fastest growing site in this space basically since then. This month we're on track for 5 million unique visitors. We were at 3 million last year, and we're running circles around most of the folks in the space because of social. 60% of our traffic is from social. It's all completely organic, and nobody in the space has been able to match this. And we have some testament to how high quality we are. So what we do is we produce extraordinarily high quality content. We'll get a little bit into how we do that. But we syndicate our content. There's actually, if you go on the Washington Post right now, I believe one of our articles is on the front page. Syndicate with the Washington Post, USA Today, Time Magazine. We were the runner-up to WebMD as the best health website on the internet in last year's Webbies, which was, I guess we'll get them this year. And I'm obsessed with this idea, right? I'm obsessed with this idea that if you can combine high-quality content with a perspective that's accessible and friendly and down to earth and talks to you as your healthy, trusted friend, you combine all that with beautiful design, I believe you can build that brand that people trust. And I do believe that we can build a brand that will last, not just make a quick buck in the next couple years, but maybe forever. So I'm similarly obsessed with Disney. And I worked on this transition for like a shockingly long time. See this? Check that out. Yeah. All right. So I love Disney. Really, I love Disney. I've read every biography on Walt Disney, and there are many more than this. And it's not just because I like Aladdin, which I do, but it's actually that I admire the way that they have been able to build an extraordinary company for so long. In 1944, they released this movie Snow White, which was a runaway success. And today, they're still a brand that all of you know, recognize, and did amazing in the fourth quarter of 2013, right? So how did they do that? Here's an example, right? The iPad app that Apple named the #1 best app was theirs last year, right? So talk about being able to innovate and stay current. So here's what we've learned and totally ripped off from them, and how we put that into practice at Greatist. So the first is finding a brand audience platform fit. Basically, the idea that I believe profoundly on the internet is that if you try to be really relevant to everyone, if you try to be relevant to everyone, you'll be really relevant to no one. Think back to all the things that you've looked at in the last few days, the time that you've spent, what blogs you've read, maybe what things you've shared. How many of those things are sort of relevant to you? There's so much noise, and we spend so much time that we, of course, go to the things that matter to us. And here's an example. How many of you, just like a show of hands, have seen Frozen? How many of you saw Frozen without kids? Yes, some of you. It's okay that you didn't see Frozen, because Frozen is not actually geared towards most of the people in this audience. It's geared to a totally different demographic. But I bet for those of you that did go see it that you loved it. Because it was the way that they build these things are for a really specific audience, but then appealing and accessible to everyone. Frozen, I think, has 3. It's actually in theaters now. So whatever you do after this, after we close, after you get all those cocktails in you at 3:45, go see this movie. No, but the idea is that Disney's obsessed with this, right? They are obsessed at narrowing down their audience. And in fact, when they wanted to reach boys or worried that they weren't reaching young boys, they bought Marvel. And so Iron Man 3 was their biggest movie of last year. So the way that Disney, one of their many platforms that they reach is on film, right, and on movies. So for us, one of the big platforms for us, we narrow down our audience. What we target is 18 to 35-year-olds for the most part, who are just trying to build health into their lives, just making health a priority, not the priority, but a priority. When we launched in 2011, there was this social network that was growing very fast called Pinterest, and the third and fourth most popular categories were food and drink and health and fitness, and there were no brands there. So we kind of went all in. We're like, well, here is the platform where our audience is and where our brand that's super visual can speak to them. And so since then, we've been, Pinterest is still our #1 driver of traffic. They told us last month that we were in their top 10 most pinned root domains, which is a lot. It's not Women's Health magazine, it's us, right? I looked at this last night, and if you were to look right now in the health and fitness or food and drink, we're like every 3rd or 4th place. And so we built, by knowing where our audience is and creating the right content for them, we're able to get this platform that drives us insane amounts of free traffic, basically, and extraordinarily high-qualified visits. So the second thing that we took from Disney was this idea of focusing on tentpoles. So probably you guys are familiar with these guys, right? These are just some example of like Disney franchises or tentpoles. It's absurd what they can do, right? What Disney does is they take something like the Jonas Brothers, again, probably not for this demographic, and they start them in a TV show, then they create a movie, then they put them in the parks, then they create a ride based on them, then they create DVDs, then they create video games so you can sing along with them, then they put costume characters, I guess none of them, but of other people in the parks. They can do it across every platform that they have. What it means is that they don't have to create thousands of articles, right? Demand Media was putting out at one point 4,000 articles a day, right, across all of their properties. Disney only has to create 1, 2, maybe 3 extraordinarily creative, amazing IP every year. And then they can repurpose it and do it across every platform and build an extraordinary business. So for us, an example of a tentpole is how to become a morning person. How many of you would like to become a morning person? Show of hands. How many? Maybe not on this trip. It turns out that a lot of people want to become morning people. I guess maybe everyone else here is already a morning person. That's amazing. So for us, how to become a morning person is a tentpole, right? It's a topic that's really relevant to our audience. And then what we can do with that is everything. We can create articles, we can create infographics, we can create small little visual minfographics that we put on all of our social networks. We can create a challenge where we get lots of our audience to get together to try and become morning people together. We can do all kinds of stuff. We can create an app to help people track it. We created a premium content guide for people to be able to go in and learn how to become a morning person with 40 pages of detailed descriptions. This alone, this topic, drives a meaningful chunk of our business. So we don't need to put out thousands of articles a day. And yeah, here's an example of, Disney's really, they're amazing at this, right? Monsters, Inc., right? They can do everything. They put out a new movie, they put out apps, they put out video games, everything. We do the same thing, right? Here's an example of our run a 5K, right? How many of you would like to run a 5K or have thought about running a 5K? And so samples like that is what we think of when we think of tentpoles. Now, how do you make a tentpole? So one is understanding what topics are really relevant to your audience. But anyone can write an article on how to become a morning person, right? So what do we do that's different, and why do we stand out? And we believe it's about the details. So one of my favorite Walt Disney stories is when he was building Disneyland. He wanted a big stagecoach, a beautiful stagecoach. It was actually this one, that you could kind of go around the park. And his Imagineers, he tasked all these amazing architects and designers. Actually, they built some of these hotels. They're pretty awesome. To build this stagecoach, and they're so proud. They show him the stagecoach. He walks into it. He sits down. He walks out, and he said, "It's all wrong." And they said, "What? What's all wrong? It's beautiful. It's perfect." And he goes, the window curtains are off." And they said, "What's wrong with the window curtains?" He says, "They're not of the right era." And they go, "Well, obviously, but they're expensive and they fit. We couldn't find window curtains from like the stagecoach times. Come on." And he said, "Well, then take them off." And so they did. And the reason was not because people will notice they're off, because nobody knows. Walt Disney was weird. Who knows like what era window curtains are. But you would maybe notice something is off, and it would distract you from this magical, special experience. So we're obsessed with the details. Everything. Every single time that you will interact with something from Greatist, it will sound like us. It will look like us. Every text that's at the bottom of our site, everything is detailed to a T. And probably the best example of this is we cite every single fact with a scientific study from PubMed. PubMed is the National Repository of Peer-Reviewed Journals. If you've seen our site, you've never noticed that. We don't rub it in your face. That's not what we do. But there's literally work cited on the bottom of nearly every single article because the details matter. You might not know that we've cited every fact, but when you read it, you can tell nothing is missing, right? You're not sitting there wondering if that fact is true, because it is. The third thing is staying on the cutting edge, which is easier said than done, obviously. But Disney, again, right, this company that's been around forever is amazing at it. This is their BuzzFeed knockoff. They have a bunch of content marketers that sit there and create Disney-related content they turn it into BuzzFeed-style lists on their own site. It's called Oh My Disney. It's absurd. Like, how can a company that's so big continue to be adopting and trying new things like that? For us, and there's lots of ways to do this. There's technology, but for us, one way to do this is to stay really relevant with how people are talking, right? We know our audience, And so by staying relevant and on the cutting edge, we talk about things in a certain way. So for example, here are some examples. But an article like WTF is Molly. Name somebody else who could write that article, right? Nobody would even dare probably write that article. But here we could have like a really good scientific answer to what the F is Molly. So what's your unique advantage, right? And how does that help you stand out? So what if you're not Disney? So those three things are things we totally ripped off from them and that totally work. I believe work because their stuff can last in a different way than other stuff. But let's say you're not Disney, and let's say you have no money like we did when we started Greatist. So one way that we've sort of solved that problem is by what we call being creative within constraints. What we do is we set up constraints. A constraint, for example, is the citing every fact with a scientific study from PubMed. Literally, that means we don't have any other option. If it's not in PubMed, we can't talk about it, right? So that forces us to then be very creative within the constraints that we set up. Another example of this is what we call providing unique, consistent value on every one of our platforms. So on our Twitter page, we don't just talk about anything that comes to mind in health and fitness. What we talk about is a tip that you can do something with. Every tweet is a health tip, basically. On our email newsletter, every single thing is an actionable thing you can do today. It's not just a summary of what's going on in the space. It's not what we like today. It's literally every day you know what you're getting in your inbox, which is something you can put into action today. We do the same thing on each of our platforms. On Instagram, all we do is we share people living the greatest lifestyle. The idea is that then people know what they're getting, and we don't have to spend as much time thinking about creating some new theme every single time. So it simplifies it, and then within it we can be more creative. And again, Disney, when they were first starting out, in many ways did this too. The early days of Disney, they actually produced cartoons that would come before movies. You would go to a feature film, and then they would have this Mickey Mouse cartoon. They had a few minutes, and within those few minutes, they had to tell a story, and then you would go and watch some other film. So they made them so good that everybody wanted those cartoons in front of their movies. And then one day, Walt Disney said, okay, now we're going to do a feature-length version of this. It took them a long time to get there, but within the constraints of a few minutes before movies, they were able to show how creative and special they were. The second thing is make love, not war. Disney can fight with whomever they want. We can't. And so we make friends with everybody. The space is too important to us, and people who are in it care too much for us to fight against them. And so the example that we use is our big influencers list. So before Greatist launched, I reached out to the top 100 influencers in health and wellness. I kind of knew the space very well. I was excited about it. And so I sent them all personalized emails. And every email said something along the lines of, I'm trying to start this company. We want to change the way how people think about health and wellness. I admire the way that you do X, combine humor and science in a convincing way. How can we do the same thing? Reached 70 of those 100 people by the end. Many of them jumped on the phone with me. Many of them I met in person. Some of them have since become investors. Some of them have become advisors. 70 of them, out of the 100 responded eventually. And we turned these people from influencers into shareholders, right? Stakeholders in what we were building, so that when we launched Greatist, our first big spike came from them sharing it. That was the first big thing that we had, was that I asked all these famous people to share it, and a lot of them did. Actually, some of our most popular content, one of our most popular pieces of content that first year was a list of the 100 most influential health and fitness people. We just released another one, and biggest traffic we've ever had. Those people just sharing it again. The third thing is have a mission, because I believe mission wins. And I believe that is a big part of the differentiation in this space. And perhaps the best example of this is a personal one, but it's also one of our most successful things that we did at Greatist, which we call the Absperiment. And it's that time I decided to get six-pack abs in 6 weeks. You guys remember those men's health magazines. On every cover, they talk about getting six-pack abs in 6 weeks, but I'd never met anyone who'd actually done that. I want to know, was that possible? What does it take? Could you actually do that? And what really surprised me was not that I got them, which I did, and I have a very glossy, Photoshop-looking photo now. My chest is very shiny. I don't know why. It's not that I lost them immediately, which I did. Within 2 days, they were long gone. Sorry. Sorry, Marty. It wasn't that it sucked, which it profoundly did. It was so miserable. I was alone and sad. Nobody on my team wanted to work with me because I was a tyrant. I was so grumpy, and nobody wanted to hang out with me. My girlfriend stopped talking to me. It was tough. But the real surprising thing was that people got it, right? Every single week, I think for 7 weeks, an introduction, and then those 6 weeks, I wrote detailed descriptions of everything that I was doing, everything I was thinking, everything I was feeling. And people really took to it. They clicked on it, who knows why, right? Maybe it was because it said six-pack abs in the title. But then in the comments, they said, I guess you're right. That does sound miserable. Maybe I don't need six-pack abs to be happy. Maybe what I really want is to look in the mirror and just feel a little bit better about myself. Maybe I want to, sweat a little because I'm so stressed out, and that helps relieve it every now and then. So I think that is really what we're trying to do. I'm much happier now, and it's long gone. They're long gone. So this idea that the world, I believe profoundly that the world is changing, right? And we talked a little bit about it at the beginning. But we've got McDonald's offering salads instead of French fries, which, serious, they actually are offering, which is pretty crazy, and who knows why they're doing it. But just the fact that they think that's something people want to hear from them, to me, is a testament that people are starting to take this a little more seriously. And a site like Upworthy can launch. Last year, they went from 0 to 50 million unique visitors. They produce no original content. What they do is they curate amazing videos, many of their most popular ones on body image and those kinds of issues, and create great titles for them. I'm sure many of you have seen Upworthy videos and shared them. They're doing something that lasts, something that is for good, and people recognize that they're doing that. So the world is crazy, right? Amazing that you can create something like that the best stuff comes to the top. So I do believe that we can all build stuff that lasts, and I think that applies very much to this space as much as it does health, in terms of the world, it being harder than ever to do something simple and make it generate income for a long time. I think that what we're now entering is a time when we really can create awesome stuff. And that stuff will, put into the right hands and put into play, generate much more income long-term than anything we could imagine. We believe the same thing, both in terms of the change in health and also in terms of our site growing. But it won't happen alone. And we can't do it ourselves. Nobody here can. That's been a big theme through all the sessions that I've sat in, is that working together is what makes this space great. So a few call to actions. The first is create awesome stuff, copy Disney, and you will win. The second is today, make a healthier choice. Just one. Maybe you already have today. But do it not because I told you, do it because it's going to make you feel better. Do it because it's going to make you happier. And share it with Healthy is Happy, because that's our hashtag. But think about it today. Maybe you're at the airport. Maybe you're going home. Maybe you're just getting drinks. The simplest changes, right? But why you're doing it is what matters, right? And finally, remember, what happens in Vegas ends up on Facebook. So I hope that you guys have had a wonderful trip, and I hope that you have many memories that will last on Facebook for a very long time. Thank you.
Big round of applause for Derek. Thank you for your message.
Thanks, everyone.
Today. I know we have some huge Disney fans in the audience, so I know they're going to be wanting to come up and talk to you. Can you stick around for a little bit?
Yeah, I'll stick around right down
over
there.
here if you want to talk to Derek. On behalf of Missy and Sean and myself, thank you all for coming out. Another awesome affiliate summit. We have some good sessions this afternoon. Don't forget the closing cocktail reception at 3:45. Safe travels. Thanks again. See you on August.